When you have a game like Genshin Impact that its main revenue source is releasing new and interesting characters, power creep is something that you pretty much expect to happen, or at least worry about happening. But before I actually talk about it, tell me down in the comments whether you think power creep is actually happening and if you think it's a problem. After all, if Diluc was still considered an S-tier character today, like he was when the game first released, a lot of new characters might not get that many sales, at least from people who are concerned about rolling for power. Of course, there are still many players who will roll for a character based on their story, their appearance, or their personality, or any number of reasons that are important to them. But if you can make a character that appeals to everybody for every reason, that's even better for business. So let's try to take an objective look at, is power creep actually happening in Genshin Impact? And to what degree? And more importantly, in what categories? Because I think there is power creep happening, just not as badly or quickly as people make it out to be. So let's take a look at what is easily the most talked about version of power creep, and that is the characters themselves. That is, are the characters that are released today better than the characters that we had when we first started? And I can tell you straight up the answer is yes and no, but let me explain. Let's start out with probably the most obvious one here, the 4 stars. Are 4 stars getting power crept? Absolutely not. Look, you can run around with your Kujo-Sara banner, wave it around, tell everyone that you love her as much as you possibly can to anyone who will listen to you, but there ain't no way in hell you're gonna try to tell me that she is even remotely as powerful as Bennett is. Bennett heals, she doesn't. His buff is better than hers and can be applied easier to more units. And Bennett is not the only one. You have Xingqiu, Sucrose, Xiangling, Fischl, like the list goes on. Normally, if you were to graph out power creep, the graph just steadily goes up and up and up and up, where power just gradually grows and characters get stronger and stronger and stronger to incentivize playing the new ones. With the 4 stars, we started out extremely high, we're just going down and down and down. Yeah, we do get some powerful ones along the way, like Diona eventually found a niche in freeze teams. And we get niche characters like Goro who are meant to support a very set amount of units, kind of like Bennett does, just only for a few people. But that's mostly talking about the supports. What about the 4-star DPS? How have they been? Well, that's going to depend who you ask. There are a lot of people who they're diehard fans of certain 4-star DPS. Yanfei has a lot of fans. Razor has a lot of fans. Those people, they might give you a biased opinion saying they're a lot better than people give them credit for, and that's probably true because people give them no credit at all. The only problem is they take a lot more gear and a lot better teammates to do it. A Ganyu in a party by herself can probably do as good as a fully fleshed out Razor party. The DPS units, I think, have stayed exceptionally consistent. They are always good, but never as good as the 5 stars. So are 4 stars getting power crept? Absolutely not. It's literally the exact opposite. They're only getting weaker and weaker and more niche, which I think is actually a good thing. While being niche naturally means they are very limited to what team comps they can be in, I think it is a lot healthier for the game to have strong units, but strong with only a couple people instead of universally powerful like a character like Bennett. Now the 5 stars, they're a little bit more complicated. If you remember way back in version 1.0 to like 1.3, if you played back then, there was a lot of doomsaying about how strong Ganyu was. In a way, it was completely justified. People were very concerned about how powerful characters were getting too quickly. After all, the only new 5-star DPS we had gotten in between Ganyu and the standard 5 stars was Child and Klee, and people didn't really like those characters that much as actual playable characters. Hell, people today still think Child is a bad character simply because they don't understand what he can do or how to use him properly. Ganyu, however, very simple character to understand. You can look at her kit and easily just see how to use her, or you can just spam chart shot and be very effective. And she was a big jump from what we had. Honestly, if the characters kept being as strong as Ganyu was compared to version 1.0, the power creep right now would be absolutely insane. The game would have either had to adapt to the strength of those characters and make old ones completely not viable, or the game would just be an absolute joke with those hypothetical characters that would exist in that world. We do keep getting powerful characters, it's just not incredibly consistent. You know, we got Ganyu, then we got Hu Tao, and then a few patches after that, we got Kazuha, and then we got Ayaka, and then Raiden Shogun. But in between those characters are lots of ones that are just good, but also balanced. You know, we break into Inazuma, and then we get Yoimiya, but we also get Ayaka, a very balanced and a very strong unit together. Then we got Raiden Shogun, who actually is pretty balanced at C0, then with her C2 becomes an absolutely broken powerhouse. When you really take a look at it though, we do get more balanced characters than we do get overpowered ones, or just really strong ones if you don't want to call them overpowered. We have a lot more DPS units that are around the power level of units like Xiao or Eula or Yoimiya than we do around Raiden or Ayaka. In a way, yeah, the power creep for 5 stars is happening, but it's not really consistent. You know, we get a strong character, but then we get just some average ones. Then we get another strong one, then we get some more average ones. After all, while we have gotten stronger characters since Ganyu still remains to be one of the strongest units in the entire game, and she's also one of the oldest at this point. Now, where there might be an argument that 5 stars are getting a little bit power crept in a way is their constellations, rather just how strong their early cons can be, rather than it being like Ganyu or Xiao where it's basically C0 or C6. They of course have some decent cons along the way. It's not a complete just road of trash up until the C6, but it's certainly not anywhere near the level as units like Raiden or Yelan have. Newer characters tend to be a bit more balanced with their constellations, and by balanced I mean not all the power is hidden behind just one at the very end, they actually get early power. I just think it's relatively safe to say that early constellations are definitely getting more powerful for characters, and they're also just getting stronger overall. Is this level of power a problem? I don't think so, because constellations for 5 stars are absolutely not required. You don't need C1 Hu Tao, and you also don't need C2 Raiden. They just happen to be very cheap, powerful upgrades for characters that, quite frankly, don't need the help. Okay, so maybe characters aren't getting power creep that badly, but what about weapons? Weapons are getting insanely overpowered. Just look at things like Staff of Homa, or even something like Engulfing Lightning. Well, let's take a look. Weapons are getting stronger, but not at an unreasonable rate. Let's go over a few KQM guides as a reference to show you just an example. Here you can see that the Engulfing Lightning is 114.2% better than the Ketchat R5. Now the thing is, Engulfing Lightning was tailor-made specifically for Raiden Shogun herself. 2 lines lower and you can see the Jade Wing Spear, which might honestly be closer to Engulfing Lightning than a lot of people may expect it to be. And also, Jade Wing Spear was meant to be a generic weapon usable by anyone who wants to crit and scale off of attack, which is basically everybody. But what about Ganyu? When she came out, she gave the Amos bow a perfect home. It's like the Amos bow was made for her. Well, since then, we've gotten a lot of new bows, 5-star bows particularly, a lot of them being pretty versatile and not actually that niche. Well, even then, whether you're playing Melt or Freeze Ganyu or whatever kind of Ganyu you want to play, the Amos bow is still competitive to this day. And that's despite its attack percent substat, which is generally seen as not very desirable, especially compared to crit or crit damage. But what about a character like Arataki Ito, who came out a little bit later and otherwise wouldn't have had a weapon that was actually tailor-made for him other than the 4-star craftable White Blind? Even in an extreme example such as that, the jump might not be as big as you expect. 36.5% is a huge increase. This is also comparing a 4-star craftable to a 5-star signature weapon from a limited banner, so you wouldn't expect it to be very close. Not as close as Jade Wing Spear would be to Engulfing Lightning, or Amos Bow to something like Polar Star or the Aqua Simulacra. Then of course there are catalysts, which, you know, we have Thrilling Tales, which is widely considered to be one of the best catalysts in the game and is literally a 3-star. Obviously it's good for different reasons than a lot of other weapons are, but it's still an amazing choice nonetheless. And it's extremely hard to power creep that because its effect is so powerful. In my own personal opinion, I don't think the weapons are honestly getting strong enough. It's not that I want them to be insanely broken or anything. It's just that when you look at them on paper and how good they are over generic standard options, you kind of got to think, like, is this even worth it for like 10% damage? And usually the answer, in my opinion, again, is no. When it does become more worth it is when you're jumping from a really bad option, like if your Raiden was for whatever reason stuck using Favonius Lance all the way up to Engulfing Lightning. That's a huge upgrade. But if you're trying to make the small jump from Jade Spear to Engulfing Lightning, well, that's not quite as worth it. But ultimately, it is your account. If Raiden Shogun having a slightly stronger slapstick to beat around those hilly churls is what helps you get your rocks off, then who am I to say you'd have more fun with a new 5-star that might just sit unbuilt on your account like 6 months? That's a personal choice. Honestly, I don't think the current 5-star weapons we get for the most part are stronger than generic options we already have to say that power creep is a problem with weapons. If anything, I think there's definitely a case to be made that signature weapons don't get strong enough, at least over the generic options, just because of how niche they can be sometimes. They are definitely getting stronger. It's just not fast enough to be a problem yet. Finally, artifacts. While not directly monetized, they are incentivized to technically make stronger artifacts that make us want to farm more rather than sit on a stack of already powerful ones that we don't need to upgrade from. While some may perceive this actually happening, what usually happens is just characters that don't have an artifact set that truly suits them and their playstyle getting one that does just that. Some are naturally going to be stronger than others, but that's not necessarily power creep given that Blizzard Strayer is one of the strongest artifact sets in the game to this day. You just need to actually be a character that can use it. Most of the new sets that come out are specifically meant for certain characters. Emblem was definitely very generic given that a lot of characters rely on solely burst damage, so it was a very good set for them. And many of them also want to build ER because, well, their burst is important. Emblem was really just a standout because we've had other sets like Clam and Husk and Xiao's set, which is basically literally only for him. Like, look at poor Ningy Wingy. To this day, she still has no 4-piece set that truly suits her playstyle. So then artifacts, are they being power crept? I don't think so. They're simply just becoming more focused than they once were. I didn't really touch on 4-star weapons, but I can cover them real quickly because the answer is no. Just like 4-star characters, it seems like we got really good ones in the beginning and it was all downhill from there. Okay, well, not downhill. They've stayed pretty balanced, I would say. They're not too strong, not too weak. Just maybe it would be nice if they came around more often so we could actually play around with them and get them on banners. You know, we could have fun with it for a little bit, enjoy it, you know, say, hey, cool, new weapon, and then re-equip with the Favonius weapon that they had on before, and then go on with their day. There is one place, one specific section of the game where we are getting undeniable power creep, where the older characters are literally worthless compared to the newer ones that replace them. And that's overworld mobility. I know it might seem a little bit of a joke, but mobility creep is something that is happening very fast. Back in the day, Kaya was considered extremely good for the overworld because he had the sprinting passive and he was a tall male character. Then we got Sayu at the beginning of Inazuma, who could just destroy that by rolling around. And then a handful of patches later, we get Yuan, who can destroy that. For vertical mobility, we had Venti, who had to use his updraft from his held skill to go upwards. Or you had Kaching, who could aim her skill upwards to get a little bit of height from that. Both felt kinda clunky. Handful of patches later, we get Kazuha, who can basically do Venti's held skill but mid-air, so that means it's amazing for climbing, not only just for getting a little bit of height. Venti's skill can still be useful, but you need Xiao or Kazuha to take advantage of it after you get up into the air. First, we had Mona, who could sprint across water. Then we got Ayaka, who could do the same thing, but then also freeze it so she could do it infinitely. Ultimately, nobody cares if people become better at exploring the overworld. Yeah, some people might. Some Venti fans may be upset that Kazuha can do it so much better. A Mona fan may be upset that Ayaka just got a straight up better version. I want them to keep getting crazier in this regard. Hoyoverse has honestly done a pretty good job at keeping the power level of new characters, new weapons, and new artifacts actually in check. Nothing is way stronger than I think it should be. And while I don't play any other gacha games to really use as a frame of reference, I gotta imagine other gacha games probably have much more out of control power creep, because the stronger you make your new characters, the more likely people are to actually buy them because they want to keep up in power levels. Hell, you see this in games that aren't just gacha games, such as League of Legends. Newer characters come out with more complex kits all the time and people always complain about them. However, the issue is that that's feature creep. That's not power creep, and that's an entirely different discussion altogether and does not directly correlate to a unit's power. Feature creep is almost an inevitability. You need to make things more complex to make them stand out more. When units like in Genshin only have 2 usable abilities, there's bound to be similarities between some the more you add to the game. But when you make them more complex, that makes them more different. That one's a discussion for a different day, so thank you to my patrons and my members for supporting me directly. Y'all are literally the best. Thank you to you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Attaboy!